What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the next Wheel of Time diary. What episode is this? Is this episode 13? Is this the 13th one of these? I don't remember for sure. Either way, I do know it is the first episode on the Shadow Rising. Now, this video is probably a little bit shorter. You might see that it's a little bit shorter than the last several of these have been. Part of that was because with The Dragon Reborn, I did a couple of those videos that were covering a lot of material. This week, I'm not covering very much. If you see where the bookmark is in there, I'm not horribly far. I only read for like 3.5 hours worth of time over the month so far leading up to this video. Part of that is because of work reasons. Part of that is because of some other reading obligations I've been doing for some other people. So I'm not really worried about this one too much at the moment. But a lot of that is also because this read will bleed well into December, probably taking the entire month. So I'm not as focused on like making this like, this needs to be done this month, so I need to read this every moment possible. Rather, it's the weekend read, and then other stuff will get read otherwise. So I'm not really that far into it. I think I'm what, like 7.5, 8% of the way through or so. Like not very far. Only up to chapter 3, though. With that being said, the first 2 chapters were very long, like each 25 pages, the longest chapters in the entire series up to this point. So there is still a little bit to talk about here, but not necessarily a ton. As for how I feel about what I read, I'm really happy to be back in here. I'm just going to give my standard rating of, hey, 5 stars for what I read. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Nothing that I'm really objecting to at the moment, even though there's one aspect of one thing that I'm kind of feeling that way. And my spoiler-free thoughts are essentially that, like I said, I'm very happy to be back in the world. I'm happy to be back with these characters. I'm happy to be back in the series. I got to be, a month and a half off of reading Wheel of Time after finishing Dragon Reborn, and was coming into this one. It's just like, do I really want to go ahead and start this just absolute behemoth? Like, am I really up for that at the moment? And I started reading, and I suppose I am. There's not really too much else to say besides the fact that there was a lot going on in these first 2 chapters already. I believe we've had, I think, 7 POVs so far already, just in these first 50 pages of the book. And all those 7 POVs were different POVs. There's a lot of really big stuff happening with some of them in chapter 2. And then a lot of really interesting, like, sort of setup stuff in chapter 1, including that was kind of going off of and resolving, I guess, a couple of things from The Dragon Reborn. But I believe that's all I can say for the spoiler-free. So I'm going to go ahead and move into the spoiler-filled just to talk about these first 2 chapters. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say here, I already said in various Discord servers that I'm reading this book in, essentially. Just kind of talking about what basically happened in all 7 of these POVs that I've read so far. Chapter 1 was filled with 4 of them, just kind of really setting some stuff up. First off, I was very excited to see an extended POV from Min, who is one of my favorite characters so far, despite her not really having too heavy of a role in the series yet. And I was especially excited for this extended POV because she hasn't really had any POVs beyond just like a couple pages in the series so far. So finally getting to see her have something in the beginning of this one was really nice, especially since some of the things that is discussed, that are discussed and revealed sort of in this first chapter with Min specifically, are material that we kind of already know from The Dragon Reborn, such as the fact that Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve disappeared from the White Tower again because they were, tasked by the Amerlin seat to head down to Tyr. So that was something that you got to see Min experience. That's something that the girls are doing, and I believe, yeah, she was also reporting directly to the Amerlin, directly, like I said, to report that, yeah, Rand is basically declared himself the Dragon Reborn, and he's heading to Terra to do that, because at the point that Min left the party to be able to head back to the White Tower, she didn't know that yet. So, yeah, like, some pretty cool stuff that was just like, yeah, this was a scene that maybe technically in some sense could have been in Dragon Reborn, but it felt like a very good placement to have it right at the beginning of this book as kind of like a refresher at some of the broad stuff that was happening in The Dragon Reborn without it being, just a straight up recap, I suppose, and also to be able to include it from a different perspective. I thought that was really cool. The second POV in the first chapter was from Elida, I think that's how you pronounce her name. I don't know if I've said her name so far in these diaries, but yeah, I'm just gonna call her Elida, the Red Aes Sedai, who was Queen Morgase's, basically right hand in Andor. Elida's POV wasn't necessarily super important in the sense that it actually revealed anything or furthered the plot so much as it was just really neat to see her POV and the way she sees Min, she sees the Amyrlin, and sees kind of some of the other stuff going on with the other girls. You can tell she's searching for the other girls, not just because, Elaine is kind of, she's supposed to watch after Elaine because she's under Queen Morgase, and Elaine is Queen Morgase's daughter. So, like, there's some interesting stuff going on there, but I just really like being able to see some stuff from Elida's POV, even though I don't love the Red Aes Sedai. In fact, I really dislike the Red Aes Sedai, but it's really cool to get kind of this, like, stereotypical bad guy type of POV stuff with the Red Aes Sedai in their POVs. It's just really kind of fun. So that's how I felt about Elida's material. It kind of also reflected on a little bit of the material that was sort of talked about briefly in Min's POV, though not necessarily so deeply that it needed to be there per se. I still really liked it. And then the next two POVs were a little bit more world building type of stuff, and I believe setting up plot lines for elsewhere in the world, probably for this book. One of them might bleed a little bit more into the next book, but I think one of them is mostly directly related to this one. Those two POVs are, first off, the younger Bornhold with the White Cloaks, because the elder Bornhold was killed at the end of the Great Hunt, I believe. So he obviously can't be the POV, the third POV in this chapter. And then the other is another Shan-Chan POV. And I'm glad to say that I was not bored or, irritated by either of these POVs, the way that I was sort of with, Bornholds, the first Bornholds and the original Shan-Chan POVs that happened in The Great Hunt. Those were my least favorite parts of that book, and I think of the series so far, I didn't feel that way about these two POVs in this first chapter. There's some cool stuff going on with Bornhold in Andor. He obviously wants revenge on Perrin for apparently being, the reason that his father was killed. Basically, to some extent, that's what's going on there. Or at least he blames Perrin, so he's searching for Perrin and has somehow figured out that Perrin and the other guys came from the Two Rivers. So the White Cloaks are planning on invading the Two Rivers, so this has me very nervous. That's something very cool. I also might be misinterpreting this, so if I'm wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong. And then the fourth POV was just kind of setting some stuff up in another part of the world, with kind of reflecting on some of the stuff that happened with the Amyrlin and Min's interactions in the first POV of the chapter. Those interactions were actually really good, I suppose I should say. But there was mention of, well, maybe some of the stuff that's going on in the world right now, or some of the threats that might be posed in some of the world, is Shan-Chan related. There's obviously the worry of that because of what happened over at Dome on Head. And so in this Shan-Chan chapter, there's some other plotting stuff going on. Just like, yeah, there's another high ruler, so to speak, who wants Rand and wants to be able to control Rand as the Dragon Reborn and being able, having that power. So that's, I'm really interested to see how this kind of goes along. Chapter 2 was a little bit more directly impactful because its three POVs were the three boys from the Two Rivers. So Perrin, then Mat, then Rand, and there was some really cool stuff happening between all of these three, including some suggestions that they were all happening simultaneously. So Perrin is obviously having conversations with Zareen, because I'm going to call her that. I don't want to call her Fael. Perrin's having discussions with Zareen's kind of arguments even, and this was probably the one aspect of the book already that I'm like, man, I'm probably going to have some problems with this plot line, because there is some really toxic stuff already cropping up between these two characters. It's just like, why? This shouldn't be the way it's going, but I know it's only going to get worse, because this plot line is one of the banes of people's existences when it comes to, like, the slog, for example, of the series, like books 7 through 10, where it's like the plot line could have and should have happened in one book, and a whole bunch of other stuff, but we don't need to get there, and I'm not there in the series anyway. I'm just going off of hearsay. The point is that there was interactions between Perrin and Serene that were concerning until they were interrupted by Perrin's axe trying to kill them basically on its own, and they assume it's Rand. Then it goes into Matt's POV next, which is another section where he's basically gambling. This was a really cool section. I really liked the gambling stuff here. And I liked the conversations that were happening at the table. I almost just kind of wanted a slice of life section of just, Matt in this location with these drunkards, just gambling and talking for no reason other than to do it. So it was really fun stuff. But in the middle of the card game as well, like Matt's hand is absolutely stacked, but then the cards sort of come alive and attack him, which was a really cool, really cool scene, really cool moment. That was like, I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't think that that was something that would happen, and I don't think very many people would have seen it coming. So it was really cool. And this also happened, and Matt also, I think, sort of in his mind, blamed Rand for it as well. So that mirrors Perrin in that way. And I believe both these events happen in some sort of relation to the crowing of a cock, which is kind of important when you realize that in Rand's POV, another, poop hits the fan in regards to something that happens in Rand's POV as well, and that's also related to that same event as well. So I think that's mostly just signifying that there's simultaneous events happening with these POVs rather than being like a sequence or whatever. But Rand's POV was really neat and kind of creepy. It starts off with a dream sequence that I'm not entirely sure I understand why it's there the way it is. I wonder if it's foreshadowing. If it is, that's kind of weird. We'll see what happens, but he is awakened and is talking with whoever it is, one of the other people in the palace, I guess, who somehow made it into his chamber and awoke him essentially and is trying to seduce him, it seems like. And then all of a sudden, with the crowing of the cock, the mirrors, just out of the mirrors, birth other versions of Rand. Not like other versions, like mirror images of Rand, essentially, that come alive and attack him. So this is like some really cool stuff, like something, and he blames the Forsaken. He thinks it's the Forsaken that has done this to him, whereas Matt and Perrin are blaming Rand for trying to kill them inadvertently. So, like, there's just a lot of seeds being, sown here at the moment. It's just a lot of cool stuff, like being hinted at, essentially, stuff that is going to happen soon, things that are going to develop, plot lines that are being introduced, essentially. So just a little bit of build up for these first 50 pages. And I wouldn't expect much different, but that is basically all that I got through. There's not a whole lot of things that actually happened, because most of what happened between so many different POVs that it's like, characters didn't go anywhere. Essentially, they didn't do anything. So not too much to talk about in this video, like I said, but I greatly enjoyed what I did read, and I'm looking forward to trying to get a decent bit of the way through this weekend. I thought I would try to get through chapter 3 this week, but ended up not having time for that for personal reasons. And so I'm going to try to plow through a lot this weekend to sort of make up for it. We'll see how much I struggle to stay on top of this book over the next, month and a half, and see how long it actually takes me to finish it. But with that being said, thank you for watching this diary. I'll be back next Thursday with another one of these. However far into the book I make it over the next several days. We'll see what happens. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back in the next video.